We've all heard it before. Seatbelts can save lives and reduce injuries, but when it comes to getting the message, our state lags behind the rest of the country, and that especially goes for its men. That's the reason for a new public information campaign by the state's Office of Public Safety and Security. We'd like to welcome as our guest from the office, the director of the Highway Safety Division, Jeff Larason. Thank you very much for being with us, Jeff.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
First of all, how do we stack up compared with the other states?
We are number 48 in the nation. There are only two states that lag behind us, New Hampshire, who has no seatbelt law, and South Dakota. We're at 74% of seatbelt use rate, and the national average is 88.
Now, I know I said at the outset that seatbelts do help, but how much do we know about this, how they really make a difference?
Well, it's about in Massachusetts, whereas 26% of people don't wear their belts, 60% of the fatal crashes are unbelted. You are much more likely to die in a crash and to be injured in a crash if you're not wearing your seatbelt.
Well, there are also numbers out there saying which people seem to be getting the message more than others, and I guess there's one group that's getting it less, one very big group.
Yeah, young men, 18 to 34, for whatever reason, just feel some sense of invincibility and do not wear their seatbelts. They wear their belts at around 50%. Those that drive in pickup trucks, for whatever reason, that type of vehicle tends to be a very low use rate. And also commercial truck drivers, specifically those who are driving on secondary roads. Not the interstate drivers, because they understand the severity of a crash is going to cause them serious injury. But people who are driving on short legs tend not to wear their seatbelt, especially those commercial drivers.
And that's the reason for a PSA aimed at men, and we're going to show you that right now.
Whether you have a beard or a mustache, whether you have a baby face or a face for radio, whether you're a smart guy or just a wise guy, your head weighs pretty much 10 pounds. So when you crash at 38 miles an hour, your head will hit the windshield like a 10-pound sledgehammer falling from a 5-story building. And no matter how hard your head is, you can't stop a crash with your face. Use your head. Buckle up.
Jeff, the first thing I learned from the PSA, it isn't about whether you're riding a big truck that you think will protect you, it's about something else.
Well, it's just about the physics of it. You know, if you're not wearing your seatbelt, first of all, the most likely injury that's going to happen to you in a crash that happens unbelted, you're going to hurt your head. Whereas if you're wearing your seatbelt, you may still get injured, but the injury will be torsional. It'll be to your body. Those injuries you can recover from. A head injury, often you do not recover from, and that's the difference. Not only in the injury likelihood, but in the severity and the long-term aspect of that injury.
Another disparity in these figures here. It seems that there is a sort of a racial divide in who's getting the message too.
That is true. The Hispanic community tends to wear their seatbelt at a much lower rate, again around 50 to 54%. The Black Native African American population is slightly below the general populace as well.
Well, there are many people out there who might believe that, okay, if you're driving the car or if there's someone next to you in the passenger seat, they really have to have the seatbelt on. But what about the back seat? I mean, is it really that vital to have it on in the back?
Especially the back seat, actually. It's even more so because people in the back seat who are involved in a crash, they become projectiles. So if you're in the front seat and somebody behind you is not wearing their seatbelt, you are much more likely to be hurt because they're not wearing their seatbelt. So you bang into each other. You start to move around the inside of that cabin when there's a crash. And so if somebody else is unbelted, you're going to be hurt.
And of course, one of the consequences of all of these things is that people get hurt more, and the cost of medical care goes up. So I guess people have to think about that.
Well, there have been some studies that show that a person who's unbelted, that the cost of that crash, the cost of the injury, which is much higher, is carried by the rest of the population. I know that there are some groups that have been advocating for the passage of a stronger law. One of the bullet points that they talk about is the impact that the rest of us are paying by unbelted crashes.
Well, another message the state's coming out with right now is click it or ticket. Are you really going to crack down on this here?
We are cracking down on it. In fact, it's going on right now. There are local and state police are doing heightened mobilizations and enforcement to enforce the law. They are.
Of course, in general, one of the things that's changed in recent years is how easy it is to be distracted while driving. I mean, you could have a handheld device, you might have some other devices in the car too. What about that?
Well, cell phones and the capability of those cell phones have expanded just exponentially over the last few years. The distractions that people have, not only in the car, but as passengers and as riding the bikes around as well, everybody is much more distracted. In 2015, last year, there was a 10% increase in the number of fatal crashes in this country, 10%. And most people there's no real clear reason as to why, but everything seems to be pointing to the fact that distractions, not only in vehicle, but amongst everybody else, is a major factor in that increase.
And I think the state recently started cracking down a bit, at least on the texting.
Yeah, so in April, our office, in the same way we have a click it or ticket mobilization, did the same thing with distracted driving. So police around the state focused specifically on enforcement of the texting while driving ban. And again, there's also a bill at Beacon Hill to try to strengthen that law so that it becomes more enforceable.
Anything we know so far about whether people have actually been getting penalized for texting, or at least any way different from before?
Sure. The number of tickets given out by state police this year has increased over what they gave out last year significantly, and the numbers are coming in on the mobilization for distracted driving amongst local police, and it looks like those numbers will be up as well.
And of course, another thing that people should be mindful of with young children, I guess, car seats for the kids, that's another thing is they've really got to be worried.
Well, not only car seats, but when they move from one phase to the next, because you're at a certain point you're facing backwards, and then you move them facing forward, and then they're in a booster seat, and then at some point they come out of the booster seat and move to the front. So that phase process is confusing for a lot of people. The state website for the Highway Safety Division has a lot of information about that process, and we'll be updating that website over the next couple of months.
And we should mention for people, if they want to check out that information in detail, what's the website they should look for exactly?
It's the state mass.gov Highway Safety.